on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. Vince Coglianese.
Hey, good afternoon to you. It's now 5:07 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, we are going to be rejoined by the state representative from Maine, Laurel Libby. We had her earlier this week to talk about her state's insane governor who wants boys to cheat in girls' sports, so much so that she was willing to get into a big debate with President Trump to his face at the White House this past week. And now the state legislature is punishing any of its members who stand up for women. It's a crazy story. She'll join us ahead. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. At the end of the Biden presidency, the Department of Energy announced a new rule that said you will not be allowed to buy a gas-fired water heater anymore in just a few years. They'll be phased out of the market. Republicans today in the United States House of Representatives passed a resolution to reverse that. And in fact, 11 House Democrats crossed the aisle to join the Sanity Caucus. Here to discuss what the heck is going on, Daniel Turner joins us now. He's the executive director of Power of the Future. Daniel, good to have you back with us, sir.
Thanks, Vince. Great to be on your program.
Why did Biden have it out for the gas-powered water heater? What's the point there?
Well, this goes back to the very spirit of our founding. Our founders envisioned a place where the government would tell you the things, the household products you're allowed to have, right? I mean, it is so absurd to think that we would ever get to the point of our country as we hit the 250th anniversary that the president's going to tell you what stove and gas hot water heater you're allowed to have, the level of pettiness and the level of arrogance to think that this is the role of government. But Biden did it very specifically because this is a back-end attack on the energy industry. Right on the front end, you deny them permits, you punish their financing, right? You threaten banks, you lend to the fossil fuel industry, we're going to come after you and tax you heavier. But then on the back end, if you get rid of products that need natural gas, well, now you're squeezing it from both sides. And that's why they were hoping to do this with – heck, there were movements, Vince, about backyard barbecues and propane tanks. There were movements about hot water heaters and any gas-powered appliance because they don't want you to have it because they hate the industry. And
it was always, everything about this was so deceitful. You described a couple of the features, but I remember during the whole gas stove debate that reared its head during the Biden era, a Biden official comes out and says, yeah, we're banning gas stoves. And then we say, oh, my God, they're trying to ban gas stoves. And they're like, no, we're not banning gas stoves. We're just banning the future sale of gas stoves. Yeah. Well, I think the stupid word games you're playing involves you getting rid of the stove I prefer.
Exactly. And you know who led this charge early on in the Biden administration? Oh, my gosh. And as soon as I'm talking to you, Vince, you go right out of my head. Gina she was the Obama head of the EPA, and she was
McCarthy, right?
Gina McCarthy. Thank you, sir. Better memory than I have. And she pushed this hard, saying, we have 100 new rules coming out for appliances. And everyone said that Gina McCarthy – what's funny? No one said that Gina McCarthy, unlike Elon Musk, Vince, no one said unelected bureaucrat. No one said, who is this unelected official who is telling me what type of appliance I am allowed to have in my household? But this is how they see their role. We have an agenda, and it's climate change, and it impacts every part of your livelihood, whether you like it or not. And I made that joke. It didn't go over well about our founders. But remember, this was a tea tax and a paper tax and a stamp tax. And they said, enough of this king. Who the hell does this guy think he is? And you have Joe Biden, who wraps himself on the flag and his love of this country, who's involved in the very minutia of your livelihood. Not only that, but making it extremely more expensive. Every light bulb change is expensive. Yes. Every appliance you have to replace is expensive.
So when the Department of Energy comes out and it says, we have decided of our own accord that we're going to ban an entire category of product from the United States. It's not a legislative thing. It's just the Department of Energy on a whim doing that very thing. Are we going to get to a place where we sort of restore the order of the Constitution? We talk a lot in the last few weeks, especially about Article 2 powers, but it's not for the power to invent laws. It's to use the government, have it at your disposal, the executive branch, and have it be responsive to the President of the United States. That makes total sense. But the idea that it would adopt for itself Article 1 powers, well, that once again is, in the words of various CNN panelists, shredding the Constitution.
It is, absolutely. And this is the importance of that Supreme Court case, which they talk about, which is the Chevron deference,
yes,
where the Congress passes a law that says Clean Air Act, but it doesn't define what clean is. It doesn't define particulate matter. It doesn't even define what is considered to be pollution. They give that to the agencies. And I understand back in the day it kind of made sense because the members of Congress said, look, we're not scientists. We don't know anything about this. We just know this is what our constituents want. We will trust the experts. Well, now the experts are telling us that carbon dioxide is a pollutant and we have to get rid of it, right? Just like the experts told us we have to wear our mask and stand 6 feet apart and that will slow the spread. So like the expertise question is up for grabs, especially when the experts are politically motivated. So the solution is Congress reclaiming their power. If you're going to pass a law, well, then you need to define the components of the law and not leave it up for this crazy unelected bureaucracy.
Yeah, and it's one thing if like the government has a bunch of experts and they're like, here's a recommended thing that Americans should be on alert for. But even then, that's all corrupt. The food pyramid is like a totally corrupt expression of the government's recommendations. But when it comes to they interfere in commerce, and it's not actually for your safety. They will use contrived studies to suggest that a perfectly good product, for instance, the gas stove, is somehow dangerous to you when, in fact, it is the preferred way to cook food among people who like cooking food.
And this has to be a role going forward of the Trump administration to change some sort of the policy when it comes to outside studies. Power of the Future puts out studies, and we put our name on our studies, and you can say, well, I don't believe that because that's Daniel Turner and he's a fossil fuel guy. But when you get these outside groups that say, here is a study that says gas stoves cause cancer, I would like to know who funds that. I would like to know the reason why it was funded. And I think before we start relying on this level of expertise, the American people have a right to know if there's some sort of vested interest, because I don't believe a lot of these experts. And you know what's the sad part about that is now science itself is in question. And we didn't do that. They did that. They poisoned science so much and politicized it so much that now we don't trust them. That's your fault, not ours.
Yeah, they've diminished our trust in every one of these institutions, quite unfortunately. I mean, but the gas stove study, if I remember correctly, the most important gas stove study that was like, hey, these things are dangerous. You could get asthma. There might be something that happens to your lungs. It was done in an environment where they made it so that it was airtight. They hung plastic everywhere to prevent airflow from even happening in the room. And then they turned the stove on and they just let the gas run. And they're like, boy, that's really dangerous. Well, yes, that is dangerous. You shouldn't do that. Yeah. That's not a good idea. But they
a very bad idea.
Yeah.
And the group that did it, and I'm not going to give them airtime, but they're out of Colorado. But the group that did that, their website, their mission statement is electrify everything, no more fossil fuels. So it's not surprising that a nonprofit, which is funded by the crazy Greens, who has as a goal ending fossil fuels, published a study that says fossil fuels are bad. Right now, you shouldn't trust my study that says fossil fuels are awesome. You know, you should take it with a grain of salt. But I disclose the fact that this is who we are and where our data comes from.
Yes.
And they don't. They bring it to the Congress. And now, you know what? The more Elon digs into Doge, you realize that these groups are paid for by USAID. They have a conference which is paid for by USAID. It's moderated by a Politico reporter who was paid by USAID, who writes a story in a newspaper that was paid by USAID. And you begin to realize, I don't even think the climate movement exists. I think the whole damn thing is just one big grift paid for by the taxpayer.
Well, and look, this your industry, fossil fuels and getting this natural treasure out of the ground. A lot of people work in it. So in addition to the madness around the lies that are told around the science, there's a lot of like American jobs that are being destroyed by like a phony ideology that is only hurting people, not helping them. And in fact, I think one of the people, in fact, I know one of the reasons that Congress took a hard look at this rule on banning water heaters that Biden had put into place is because there was a business owner called Frank Windsor. He's the owner of a tankless water heater manufacturing facility. And he was warning that hundreds of his jobs at his plant would be put at risk if this new rule goes into effect. That's hundreds and hundreds of people who lose their jobs. That's a microcosm of an industry thrown into chaos by left-wing Marxists who constantly introduce it when they have power.
And do you think they'll get a 60 Minutes segment where they'll talk about all those employees and follow them at home and talk about how difficult it is? Right, and that's what we're seeing nonstop of these federal bureaucrats. And I don't celebrate anybody having a hardship. I don't celebrate anyone. I'm not far from D.C. I know there are people on my commute to D.C. if I go in who are in bad shape. But when all of our energy workers were fired, they were necessary casualties in the war on climate. When John Kerry stood there the first day of the inaugural and said the 14,000 Keystone guys, they now have the option to work in the green economy. We got no sympathy from the press. We were told it was necessary.
And private sector workers across the country have no sympathy for the plight of Washington right now. You're right. There are good people who are being caught up in this. And anybody who's within the sound of our voice is the kind of person who I definitely want working in the federal government because they have good judgment. It's as expressed by their listening habits. But I'm telling you that the American people in the private sector, the ones who every time a recession hits, they take it in the face. And then the people who live in and around Washington are able to comfort themselves with this basic point, which is, well, Washington is basically insulated from recession. That every time that occurs, there's no wonder the American people say, enough.
Yeah.
We have to right this ship. We have to get back on the right track. And so the American people voted for a course correction. And so you're seeing the impact on the federal workforce for sure. And the other side of this that I've been thinking a lot about is the algorithmic impact. You had the federal government telling the big tech companies, censor the American people, use algorithmic weapons against them. And the American people just voted to bring in one of the biggest tech CEOs on the planet, Elon Musk, to create an algorithm that searches for and destroys federal government largesse. So now the American people have algorithm weapons in their hands, and they're using them. And so I'm watching a major correction here happen, Daniel Turner. And yes, occasionally you're going to have a good person caught up in this. And that's one of the tragedies of this. It's always the case. But it needs to be done, or else we're going to lose our country.
It is. And I started Power of the Future because of those original jobs who were caught up in Biden and the Obama war on coal, and the 40,000 some odd coal miners who lost their jobs because he decided he didn't want to have coal anymore. Seeing this from my perspective and knowing the men and women who work in this industry and how they create a product that we need. We need oil and gas and coal. We need these raw materials for our livelihood. Joe Biden had 4 years to try his agenda, and everything got more expensive, and the world got more dangerous. So it didn't necessarily work, right? There's no metric of success other than the virtue signal that they can say they made huge investments to fix the climate.
Yeah, and they never.
And the only reason why.
Yeah.
I was going to say the only reason why I don't feel that bad is because, and this sounds cruel, but a lot of the very bureaucrats now who are losing their jobs stood by gleefully when the guys who I represent were losing theirs, and they pointed their fingers and they laughed at them.
Yeah, and
they said, "You're causing climate change."
Yes.
So you were part of this apparatus, buddy, and now you're going to feel the pain on your end.
And they were responsible for creating the policies that destroyed those jobs. Yes, exactly right. And and at its core, the left never talks about human impact. It's never part of the conversation. It's always these other ridiculous ideas that they want to talk about, but they never talk about the human suffering that will result from their policies. And we've lived through it, unfortunately. Daniel Turner, thank you very much. Power of the Future. Always nice to talk to you, sir.
Thanks, Vince.
It's 5:21 now.
Tomorrow on the Chris Plant Show, Democrats love CEO killer Luigi Mangione, raising more than $500,000, and the women love him. 9 a.m. on WMAL.
All right, let's go to Tony calling in from Silver Spring, Maryland, line 5. Hello, Tony. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Yeah, hi, Vince. Good to speak to you again. It's my second time, I think. But anyway,
thank you.
You were talking about the government's inefficiency in trying to solve environmental problems.
Yeah.
We have something new in Montgomery County, Maryland, where you're not allowed to use a gas-powered leaf blower. Now, I was just thinking about that. It's going to take you longer to do it, which means you'll be using a lot of electricity, and where does that come from? They actually use the excuse that this is a noise nuisance, but if you're going to be out there blowing it longer, if it's slightly less loud, then it's going to be longer. And this just goes the whole pattern of, you know, when the government tries to solve what might even be a legitimate environmental problem, they always do it the wrong way.
Yeah.
Or most of the time.
Also, like, you know, how about focus on crime? You want to ban noise? You can get rid of all the police sirens if you actually got the crime under control. And the leaf blower thing, I'll tell you what, Tony, I own an electric leaf blower. I've got one at home. And I use it for little projects. But if I'm trying to, like in the fall, and I really want to clear leaves, that thing's not moving. And when I put it up, it's got like a full blast feature. I can put that's its highest ability to blow leaves. The battery dies in 5 minutes. So it's like, what am I doing? Why am I even wasting my time with this thing? It's the least efficient way to blow leaves off your lawn, to clear the street. Just bring out a dude with a backpack leaf blower, gas-powered, go crazy, get all the leaves out of the way. It's done in 5 minutes, and you don't have to deal with all this crap. But, of course, once the government gets involved, everything becomes worse, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not really solving anything anyway.
No.
You know,
it's the appearance of action. It makes them feel good as they ruin your life. Look at us controlling you. Thank you, Tony. Excellent second call. I appreciate that. Coming up, State Representative from Maine, Laurel Libby, will be back with us. We'll get an update from her. She mounted a fight on behalf of girls, and now the state legislature is punishing her. We'll find out how ahead.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
And it's crazy, but the NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good, I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
President Trump last Friday with Maine Governor Janet Mills directly to her face at a meeting at the White House saying, you better protect girls and their sports in Maine or else you lose your federal funding. She said, no, I'm going to abuse those girls and I'll see you in court. Earlier this week, we spoke to a state representative in Maine about this very thing and her out-of-control governor. Her name's Laurel Libby. Since our conversation on Monday, well, the state legislature and the Democrats who control it have turned against her as well. Joining us now, State Representative Laurel Libby is back from Maine. Good to have you back with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so we talked on Monday, and what transpired this week? You've been basically trying to fight back against this abuse of the girls in your state. You've been concerned that there was really an event there that involved pole vaulting where a biological male stole first place among the girls in the state, and you said that is unacceptable, right?
Yeah, I actually simply posted the facts. I posted a photo of last year when this individual won 5th place at a regional meet as a male, and side-by-side contrast with a photo from this year, the meet that happened last Monday, where he won 1st place in the girls division at the state championship. And just the stark facts and that contrast, the post went viral. It's been seen across the country. And I was censured by my Democrat legislature leadership and their caucus for making that post.
So when we think of a censure at the federal level, usually it sounds like it's just a stern finger wag, like, oh, you're being censured.
Mm-hmm.
But in Maine, at least the way they did it to you this week, they cut you off from being able to speak at all. They said you don't have speaking rights anymore?
They said that I no longer have the right to speak or vote.
Is that constitutional in the state of Maine, that they can stop an elected representative from voting in the legislature?
Well, the speaker seems to think that it is, but I do not believe that he is accurate.
Okay, so they that means that's effectively, if you're not allowed to speak or vote in the state legislature, what they're saying is you're not a member of the state legislature anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially it. The fact is, in order to actually expel a sitting legislator, you have to have a 2/3 vote. And so they can't do that because they don't have any Republicans who will back that action. So instead, they've made up that there is this consequence that they can give with a censure, and that consequence can be erasing my voice from representing my constituents. So not only are they trying desperately to silence Maine girls and ensure that folks don't know about the injustice going on here in Maine in girls' sports, but now they're silencing my constituents and saying that I can no longer represent them in the State House.
So what recourse do you have right now? Is there any way you can sue to get those rights back for your constituents?
That's a question I'm working on getting answered right now.
Okay.
Because I think that's really the only recourse I have. I can't apologize for speaking the truth and letting folks know what is going on in our state.
So I'm sorry. Let me dwell on that point. They made it, as I understand it, a predicate of you getting this ability back to literally just be a state representative and vote. The only way that can happen is if you go through a struggle session and apologize to them.
And to be clear, it has to be a speaker-approved apology.
Oh, so it's coerced speech. They get to choose the way you apologize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's nonsense from beginning to end, but it's really harmful nonsense because it is silencing 9,000 people in Maine who elected me to represent them, and now their voices are not going to be heard.
Okay.
And it's just a desperate attempt to not bring attention to what they're doing to girls in Maine with this dangerous and extreme ideology. But in fact, what they've done is bring far more attention to it.
Exactly.
So I think their choice was unwise.
Yes, but it serves your purpose well, which is to draw attention to this horror. And so they are really stepping on rakes here. The House Speaker in Maine is a fella called Fecteau. Is that his actual name?
Yeah, Ryan Fecteau.
Fecteau, okay. So Fecteau, what happened to his X account this week? There was he's on X, right? Or he has been. And after all of this chaos where they tried to banish you from doing your job, what happened?
Well, listen, it is no surprise that Ryan Fecteau is not a fan of free speech. So it will come as no surprise to your listeners to learn that in the shakeup after this and seeing the large number of folks that are absolutely opposed to this censure, and they expressed that on X, it's no surprise that he has deleted his page because he doesn't want to hear it.
So rather than listen to constituents, he deleted his entire page so that he couldn't hear them?
That is accurate.
Okay. Wow. So everything about this sounds very fascistic. They're trying to compel your speech. They're not letting you vote. They don't want to hear from constituents. What is happening in Maine?
You know, it's weird. I keep hearing one party get called fascists, but then I keep seeing others actually doing the fascist things.
Okay. All right. So what comes next for you? I know you're looking into your options here. What's going to happen next in your view?
Well, certainly, I will continue to speak up for Maine girls, and I'm thankful that the entire Republican caucus here in Maine stands with me on that.
Yeah.
And we'll be pursuing options to maintain my voice in the House, get my voice back for my constituents. But we're glad to see, of course, that there is hopefully federal remedy coming for the girls' sports side of things. Because I think that's the only way that we're going to see a fair and level playing field in our state. And
yes.
And that's my primary concern here. is making sure that their voices are heard, because this is an unacceptable state of things here in Maine.
Totally unacceptable. Lastly, State Representative Laurel Libby, has the federal government, anybody in the government reached out to you? Anybody from the Justice Department or the Education Department or anywhere else?
Yeah, I've spoken with a representative of Pam Bondi, filling them in on a few of the details, and look forward to speaking with other folks in the days to come.
Me too. I'm glad you're doing it. Thank you very much for staying in the fight. It is nice to talk to you again. Thank you for doing this today.
Thanks so much.
That's State Representative Laurel Libby of Maine, who's not allowed to speak in the state legislature. She's not allowed to vote in the state legislature. If she wants to, she has to submit to a struggle session with an apology that is, I guess, handwritten practically by the Speaker of the House of Maine, the Democrat, whose actual name is Fecteau. Speaker Fecteau, whose position is clearly that boys should relentlessly cheat in girls' sports, and anyone who says otherwise deserves to be banished from society. That's the position of the Democrats in Maine. And quite unfortunately, many Democrats everywhere in a lot of these state legislatures. But in Maine, a perfect little laboratory, an example of just how out of control these things can get. Let me see. I've got Nina calling in from Bristow, Virginia on line 1. Nina, good afternoon. You are on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Good afternoon, Vince. So we in Prince William County are faced with a similar situation. There was a board meeting last Wednesday where myself, a few conservative groups as well as liberal groups showed up to talk about the effects of not conforming to the executive order from the federal level. And we were shocked and surprised to hear that Prince William County School Board is going to maintain their current policy, which is to comply with students and parents' use of bathroom facilities and locker room facilities with the identity rather than their biological sex. We made a big case as to why the school board should comply. We got $50 million of federal funding on the line. And towards the end of the meeting, it came to light that one of our board members had actually, a few days before the planned meeting, sent out a post on his personal Facebook page to the LGBTQ rights advocacy group in Prince William County, urging them to show up in full force, full color garb, and make the case as to why they should continue to keep their existing policies and defy the governor's orders. And so we are in a battle. It's an uphill battle. As your previous speaker said, the tone during the meeting, we're completely divided, but they definitely paint the picture like we're fascists, we're racists, we are, and basically all the parents that did speak confirmed over and over that this is nothing about anti-LGBTQ.
Yes. This
is pro-female, pro-common sense, and it's actually the law of the land. But they are non-compliant. They're openly non-compliant. In fact, they were very almost. I mean, I got the feeling that they were kind of laughing at us, that we were wasting our time to come out there and try to compel them to comply with the laws of our state here.
So how does it work at
the reason for my call? Well, the reason for my call is I wanted other people who are driving right now, the 5 o'clock hour, to hear that Prince William County, as well as Loudoun County, Arlington, Fairfax County, they are currently being sued by the AFL.
And Alexandria.
Yes, sir. But we need those who are interested in helping this agenda to stop, right? We need safe spaces. It's already the law of the land. But to show up and actually do their job and put their focus instead of on social.
So in Prince William County, Nina, in Prince William County at the school board meeting, how does it work? Did you get like 30 seconds to speak or something, and then all of the people on the school board pretend like you're not even there, or they stare at their phones, or they scoff at you, or they treat you with utter disdain as if you're not actually a tax-paying citizen and perhaps parent of Prince William County?
Yeah, all of the above. I did notice one of the school board members, the one who's really openly for the policy of maintaining identities in school, she was definitely on her phone. The head of our school board, Miss Latanya McDade, she definitely had a blank stare on her face. I came at them pretty hard. I told them I'm just a mom that likes to drop my kids off at school, make sure they get home safely and learn something throughout the day. A couple of the guys were taken aback. It's baffling. In the private sector, this type of behavior would never last. If they were actually sitting on a board that needed to turn a profit and make shareholders happy, all of them would be fired, with the exception of 3.
Also,
yeah.
To the point that you made before, which is they treat you as if you're the person who's morally lacking, that somehow you're the bigot for wanting to protect girls. All of that has the hallmarks of abusive relationships, where this is where like the phrase gaslighting is often used, where the person who's being abused is actually being told, you're the abuser, you're the one who's causing all of the trouble. And meanwhile, you're standing there alongside all those other great parents and saying, actually, we're here to defend these girls and all these kids. They shouldn't have their heads filled with abusive nonsense. They shouldn't have their destruction enabled. They should be recognized as children, as creations of God, man and woman. They were made, and you shouldn't be abusing them. And that for them to have the temerity to sit up there on that dais and then look back at you and act like you're the person who's morally depraved, it is the ultimate form of projection and gaslighting. And it's not just in Prince William County, of course. It's happening all over the place, and people are getting sick and tired of it, just like you, Nina.
Yeah, well, so if I could finish off with this point, that's exactly the case. It's a 100% gaslighting, which then turns into a Stockholm syndrome, right? Then you start feeling sorry for those people.
Yeah.
And then you start thinking, well, maybe they're right. It's complete gaslighting. I would love to finish off with this point that
Please.
No one cares, really. They have an agenda. They're digging in their heels. The tone is very evident. You can even see it in the way that they display the artwork. I mean, literally, the chairman of our school board was sitting there with a huge poster of a donut. And I just thought, this is an embarrassment. These people are getting paid, a lot of money. Miss McDade makes over $360,000 a year.
Do they have children?
I mean, pardon?
Do they have children? Do these school board members even have kids?
They do. Some of them are educators within our schools. Some of them have been through Prince William County schools themselves. One of them is a practicing ophthalmologist. These are people that you would think are considered, reasonable, common sense, professionals in their own daily jobs. But when it comes to making policy decisions for an entire population of school-aged children in a very large county in our state, they have one interest in mind, and that is to dig in their heels and protect the very small minority that is causing a huge ruckus. They are not focusing on academics. They're focusing 100% on these social ideologies.
They're handmaidens for evil. It's really bad. It's really awful. Thank you, Nina. Thank you. Please keep doing that. And I hope so many people join you shoulder to shoulder. Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
My
Bye-bye.
pleasure. It's 5:51 now.
Mark Levin, weekdays 6 till 9 on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
We're finding out a lot more about Hollywood legend Gene Hackman and his wife and their dog, all dying, found this week. Detectives are now saying they do believe the deaths are suspicious.
Detectives believe that the circumstances surrounding the death of Hackman and his wife are suspicious enough in nature to require a thorough search and investigation. When 2 Santa Fe County Patrol deputies arrived at the scene, they walked to the front of the residence, and that is when they found the front door slightly open. They did not observe any signs of forced entry into the home. That is according to the warrant. After they entered the residence, they immediately observed a bathroom to the left of the front door. The door of the bathroom was opened, and that is where they discovered the body of Hackman's wife lying on the ground. An orange prescription bottle was also found near her body.
They say he was found in the mudroom, and the dog was found, German Shepherd, was found deceased in a bathroom closet about 15 feet from the wife that described her body as mummified. Earlier they said there's no suspicion of foul play. Well, it certainly sounds suspicious at the very least. The great one, Mark Levin, up next here on WMAL.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.